The morning sky above New Haven turned blood red as massive shadows blocked out the twin suns. Colony Administrator Una pressed her face against the observation deck's reinforced glass, watching in horror as the HFY War fleet descended like vultures circling their prey. "Ma'am, their ships are bigger than our entire city," whispered her aide Guan, her voice barely audible over the rumbling that shook the building's foundation. Una had seen holographic records of HFY vessels before, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The lead ship alone stretched nearly 2 kilometers, its hull bristling with weapon arrays that could reduce mountains to dust. Behind it, dozens of smaller craft moved in perfect formation, their dark metal surfaces reflecting the colony's lights. Like the eyes of hunting beasts, the first energy blast struck. New Haven's outer shield generator with the force of a small sun, the protective barrier that had kept the colony safe for 50 years, flickered like a dying candle, casting eerie shadows across the settlement below. Shield integrity at 70% and falling, Communications Officer Minho called out from his station, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air conditioning. His fingers danced across the control panel, trying desperately to reroute power from non-essential systems. Through the massive windows of the command center, Una could see families running through the streets below, carrying whatever belongings they could manage. Children cried as their parents swept them up, seeking shelter in the underground bunkers that everyone had hoped would never be needed. "How long do we have?" Una asked, though she dreaded the answer. "At this rate of bombardment, maybe an hour." Before complete shield failure, Minho replied, his voice cracking with the weight of delivering such devastating news. "I've tried every frequency I know, but the HFY are jamming everything. Our distress calls aren't getting past their interference field." Another massive blast rocked the colony, and this time the lights flickered throughout the command center. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in an ominous red glow that made the situation feel even more hopeless. Una's hands trembled as she accessed her administrative console, scrolling through emergency protocols that seemed pathetically inadequate against the force now bearing down on them. Most of the procedures dealt with natural disasters or equipment failures, not an invasion by one of the galaxy's most feared empires. "Wait," she muttered, pausing at a section she had never paid attention to before. The archive protocols. Something here about ancient emergency procedures. Her fingers moved quickly across the holographic interface, diving deeper into files that hadn't been accessed in decades. Most of the old emergency codes were obsolete, relics from a time when the galaxy was a different place, when species still believed in mutual aid and protection. Then she found it. The Universal Emergency Protocol, established by the Galactic Cooperation Treaty nearly 3 centuries ago. The file was marked with warning symbols and required administrative override codes that took her 3 tries to enter correctly. "The Terran Accords," she whispered, reading the ancient text that appeared on her screen. "This says that any colony under attack can invoke emergency assistance from the Terran Defense Force." Giwan looked up from helping coordinate the evacuation efforts. "Ma'am, the Terrans have been gone for hundreds of years. Everyone knows they were wiped out during the First Contact Wars." "Maybe," Una said, her voice growing stronger as she read further. "But this protocol is still active in the galactic database. If there's even a chance, ... The building shook again, more violently this time. Through the windows they could see the outer settlements burning. The HFY weren't just conquering New Haven. They were destroying everything in their path, leaving nothing but scorched earth behind. "Transmit the old code," Una commanded, her decision made. "Send it on all available frequencies, maximum power." Minho's eyes widened. "Ma'am, that will drain our remaining power reserves. If this doesn't work, we'll lose all communications. If this doesn't work, we'll all be dead anyway." Una replied grimly. The signal burst forth from New Haven's communication array with the last of their available power, racing across the galaxy at faster than light speeds. It carried with it the ancient codes and frequencies that most of the galaxy had forgotten, reaching out into the void with a desperate plea for help, far beyond the edge of known space, hidden within an asteroid field that appeared empty to casual observation. The signal was detected by sensors that had been waiting patiently for over 2 centuries, Captain Jiho jerked upright at his monitoring station, his coffee cup clattering to the floor as alarms began sounding throughout the hidden facility. "Sir, we're receiving a priority alpha transmission," his communications officer reported, her voice filled with disbelief. "It's the old Universal Emergency Protocol." Jiho's weathered face went pale as he read the signal details. After 300 years of silence, someone was finally calling for help using the ancient codes. Someone was calling the Terrans home. "Get me Admiral Hayne immediately," he commanded, his voice cutting through the suddenly busy command center. "Tell him the Deathworlders are being summoned." The emergency klaxon echoed through the corridors of the TNS Retribution as Admiral Hayne strode onto the bridge, his boots clicking against the metal deck plates. For 3 centuries, this massive dreadnought had drifted silently through the void, disguised as nothing more than a derelict hulk floating among the cosmic debris. Now, every system was coming alive with a deep, resonant hum that spoke of incredible power awakening from its long slumber. "Status report," Han commanded, settling into the captain's chair that had been waiting for this moment for longer than most civilizations had existed. "Commander." Somin looked up from her tactical display, her eyes bright with an emotion that had been dormant for generations. "All primary systems are online, sir. Main engines at full power, weapons charging to operational status. The fleet is responding beautifully." Through the massive viewport that stretched across the bridge's front wall, Yon could see other ships emerging from their hiding places. What had appeared to be asteroids and space debris for centuries now revealed their true nature. Massive HULLs unfolded like metal flowers blooming in the darkness, their surfaces gleaming with the dull sheen of advanced armor plating. The Vengeance uncurled from what had seemed like a dead comet, its weapon ports opening with mechanical precision. The Defiance shed its disguise as a mining platform, revealing rows of missile tubes and energy cannons that could level entire cities. One by one, humanity's hidden fleet came to life. Each ship a testament to 300 years of careful planning and patient preparation. 17 battle groups confirmed and ready, Admiral reported Lieutenant Quan from the communications station. The Prometheus group is holding position near the Centauri Nebula. The Olympus Squadron just dropped out of stealth mode in the Vega system. They're all awaiting your orders. Hyun nodded slowly, his weathered hands gripping the armrests of his command chair. He had been just a young officer when the galaxy had turned against Earth. When species after species had joined forces to eliminate what they saw as a dangerous threat to their established order, they had called humans too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be allowed to spread among the stars. "Sir," Commander Soman said quietly, "the signal originated from the New Haven colony, Zephyrian settlement, population approximately 2 million. They're under attack by a Krovaxi battle fleet." The name sent a chill through the bridge crew. Everyone knew about the Krovaxi Empire and their reputation for brutality. They didn't just conquer worlds, they erased them, leaving nothing behind. But scorched rock and the memory of what had once been beautiful, Zephyrians here and mused, remembering the peaceful species that had always been kind to humanity during the early days of galactic exploration. They were one of the few who voted against the Earth's elimination protocol. "That's correct, sir," Salmon confirmed. Their representative walked out of the Galactic Council chambers when the vote was called, said it was a crime against the natural order. Hyun stood and walked to the viewport, gazing out at the stars that had once welcomed humanity with open arms before fear and jealousy turned them into enemies. The old treaties were still in effect, written in the days when the galaxy believed in mutual protection and assistance. Most species had forgotten about those ancient agreements, but humanity never forgot anything. "You know what we learned during those dark years?" Yon asked, his voice carrying to every corner of the bridge. "We learned that the galaxy needs shepherds. Someone has to protect the innocent from the wolves." The crew nodded in understanding. They'd all grown up hearing the stories passed down from generation to generation. Tales of Earth's final days, when massive fleets had descended from the sky to finish what diplomacy had started, had been ready. Humans had seen the betrayal coming and had prepared accordingly. "The evacuation protocols worked perfectly," continued Hayon. "While they were busy destroying an empty planet, We were already spreading to the dark corners of the galaxy, building, waiting, getting stronger. Commander Summon's console chimed with an incoming transmission. Admiral, we're receiving confirmation from all battle groups. Total fleet strength, 437 ships of the line, plus support vessels. Outstanding, Heen replied, a grim smile crossing his face. Signal all ships. Tell them we're going home. Let them it's time to remind the galaxy why they feared us in the first place. Across the vast reaches of space, human ships that had been hiding in plain sight for centuries began moving toward a common destination. The cargo hauler that had been making routine supply runs between mining stations suddenly revealed itself as a heavy cruiser bristling with weapons, scientific equipment modules, and deployed its true armament. Jump coordinates locked in, announced the navigation officer. All ships report ready for quantum tunnel insertion. Hyun returned to his command chair, his expression growing cold as he thought about the Krovaxi fleet that was currently terrorizing innocent civilians. They had chosen the wrong species to attack, in the wrong place, at the wrong time. Signal. The fleet, he ordered, his voice echoing with the authority of 3 centuries of righteous anger. We jump in 5 minutes. When we arrive, we remind the galaxy that humanity keeps its promises. The Death Worlders were coming home, and they remembered every betrayal, every broken treaty, every innocent life that had been lost while they waited in the darkness. The galaxy was about to learn that some sleeping giants should never be awakened. Admiral Wergox stood tall on the command deck of his flagship, the destroyer of worlds, watching through the massive viewing screen as New Haven's protective shields finally collapsed under his fleet's relentless assault. The sight filled him with deep satisfaction. Another pathetic colony would soon join the long list of worlds that had learned to fear the Krovaxi Empire's might. Their defenses are completely down, Admiral, reported his tactical officer, Asgard, a veteran who had participated in dozens of planetary conquests. The settlement is defenseless. We can begin the final bombardment at your command. Wergak's forearms spread wide in a gesture of triumph, his reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smile among his species. The Krovaxi had conquered over 200 worlds in the past century, and each victory had been easier than the last. These soft, peaceful species never learned to fight properly. They relied on diplomacy and ancient treaties that meant nothing when faced with superior firepower. Look at them scurrying around like insects, he said, pointing at the holographic display showing New Haven's population fleeing through the streets. They actually thought their little energy barrier could protect them from the might of the Krovaxi war machine. They had all seen this scene countless times before. First came the fear, then the desperate pleas for mercy, followed by complete surrender and submission to Krovaxi rule. Shall we demand their surrender now, Admiral? Asked his communications officer. No, Wergok replied, his eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. Let them suffer a little longer. Fear makes the conquest more complete. They need to understand that resistance is futile before we offer them the privilege of serving the Empire. Suddenly, space itself seemed to tear apart directly above New Haven. Reality twisted and bent as massive portals ripped open in the fabric of the universe, each one glowing with an eerie blue light that cast strange shadows across both fleets. What in the void is that? Wergok demanded. It was enormous, easily dwarfing even Wergak's flagship, but its design was completely alien to anything the Empire had encountered. The hull was jet black, covered in scars and battle damage that spoke of countless conflicts. Strange symbols were etched into its armor plating, markings that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Admiral, sensors are detecting massive energy signatures, his tactical officer reported, his voice now tinged with uncertainty. These ships, ... they're not in any of our records. The power readings are off the charts. More portals opened, disgorging ship after ship of the same mysterious design. Within moments, an entire fleet materialized around New Haven, their dark hulls forming a protective barrier between the colony and the Krovaxi forces. The newcomers moved with precision that spoke of centuries of combat experience, taking defensive positions with the fluid grace of apex predators, Captain Deho stood on the bridge of the TNS Retribution, his calm eyes surveying the Krovaxi fleet through the tactical display. After 300 years of waiting, humanity had finally been called back into the light. The moment felt surreal, but the sight of innocent civilians under attack brought crystal clarity to his purpose. "Weapons systems online," Captain reported. His tactical officer, "All ships are locked and loaded, awaiting your orders." "Open a channel to the Krovaxi fleet," Deho commanded, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had seen too much war to be impressed by bullies. The communication established. Deho's image appeared on screens throughout the Krovaxi fleet. His appearance was shocking to species that had believed humans extinct for centuries. He looked remarkably ordinary, almost disappointingly so, until you noticed his eyes. They held the weight of generations, the patient fury of a species that had been pushed too far. "This is Captain Deho of the Terran Defense Force," he announced, his words carrying across space with deadly calm. "You are in violation of the Galactic Protection Protocols and are hereby ordered to cease your attack on this colony immediately. You have 30 seconds to withdraw your forces and depart this system." Admiral Wergak's shock quickly transformed into rage. How dare these unknown aliens threaten the mighty Krovaxi Empire? His species had crushed every enemy they had ever faced, and these mysterious newcomers would be no different. "You dare threaten us?" Wergak roared into his communication system. "We are the Krovaxi Empire. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. You will learn the price of standing against us." Without waiting for a response, Wergak ordered his entire fleet to open fire. Hundreds of plasma cannons erupted simultaneously, sending streams of superheated energy racing toward the human ships. The barrage was enough to sterilize a planet's surface, a display of firepower that never failed to destroy any enemy fleet. The plasma fire struck the human shields and simply disappeared, absorbed by defensive systems that shouldn't have existed. Energy that could melt mountains dissipated harmlessly against barriers that seemed to bend the laws of physics themselves. "Impossible," whispered Wergak's tactical officer. "No shields can withstand that kind of concentrated firepower." Deho watched the light show with complete indifference. 3 centuries of hiding had given humanity time to develop technologies that made their former enemies' weapons look like children's toys. The Krovaxi had grown comfortable with easy victories against peaceful species. They were about to learn. What happened when you picked a fight with Deathworlders? "Return fire," Deho commanded quietly, his voice as calm as if he were ordering morning coffee. The human response was swift and devastating. Instead of energy weapons, they used kinetic rounds fired at a significant fraction of light speed. The projectiles punched through Krovaxi shields as if they were made of paper, tearing through armor plating that had never been breached. 3 Krovaxi battleships exploded in brilliant fireballs, their hulls unable to withstand the incredible impact forces. The remaining ships of Wergak's fleet suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that fought unlike anything they had ever encountered. This wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration of what happened when you threatened innocent people in front of humanity. The Deathworlders had returned, and they were about to remind the galaxy why fear of Earth had once united dozens of species in a desperate alliance for survival. Admiral Wergak's 4 hands gripped the command console so tightly that his claws left deep scratches in the metal surface. Around him, his bridge crew watched in stunned silence as their mighty fleet was torn apart piece by piece. Ships that had conquered entire star systems were being destroyed with surgical precision, their crews having no time to even send distress signals before being consumed by explosions that lit up the darkness of space. "Status report," screamed, his voice cracking with a mixture of rage and growing terror. "Sir, we've lost 60% of our fleet in the past 10 minutes, his tactical officer reported, his voice trembling. "The World Breaker is gone, the Stellar Dominator is breaking apart, and the Conquest just disappeared in a ball of fire. These humans, they're not fighting like any species we've ever encountered." Through the viewing screen, Wergak could see the human ships moving with impossible coordination. They didn't charge headlong into battle like the warrior races, nor did they rely on overwhelming firepower like the military empires. Instead, they moved like a pack of hunters, each ship covering the others, creating overlapping fields of destruction that left no escape routes for their prey. "How are they doing this?" Wergok demanded, watching as three more of his battleships were simultaneously targeted and destroyed in perfect synchronization. "Our shields are rated to withstand anything. In the galaxy, our weapons have never failed to breach enemy defenses. This is impossible." Lieutenant Yunha sat at her station aboard the human ship Vindication, monitoring the Krovaxi communications with cold satisfaction. She had been born in the hidden colonies, raised on stories of Earth's final days and the galaxy's betrayal. Her parents had been among the lucky few who escaped the homeworld before the bombardment began. She had grown up dreaming of this moment. "Captain, I'm intercepting their command frequencies," she reported to her superior. "The Krovaxi admiral is demanding to know how we're defeating them so easily." Captain Jinwoo, a descendant of the Seoul evacuation fleet, smiled grimly. "Put me through to their flagship. I think it's time they learned a history lesson." Communication channel crackled to life, and Yuna's image appeared on the Krovaxi command bridge. Her human features were unremarkable by galactic standards, but her eyes held the cold fury of a species that had been forced to claw its way back from the brink of extinction. "You want to know how?" she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Of battle like a blade. Your people tried to glass our homeworld 3 centuries ago. They failed. Everything that came after just made us stronger." Wergok stared at the human face on his screen, his mind racing to process what he was hearing. "You're lying. The Terrans were wiped out during the Purification Wars. We have records of Earth's destruction. We have records of Earth's surface." Being scorched, Yuna corrected, her smile growing colder. "But you never checked to see if anyone was actually there when you burned it. Classic mistake. You assumed we were too primitive to see the betrayal coming." The truth hit Wergok like a physical blow. Stories were true. Humans had somehow known that the galaxy would turn against them, and they had prepared accordingly. While diplomatic talks dragged on for months, giving the appearance of negotiation, the Terrans had been secretly evacuating their population to hidden colonies scattered throughout the galaxy. "Impossible," Wergok whispered.
Ounce.
The intelligence. Reports showed massive population centers right up until the bombardment began. "Holograms and automated systems," Yuna explained with obvious satisfaction. "We kept the lights on and the traffic moving while our real people were already light years away. You spent months burning empty cities while we were building new ones in places you'd never think to look." Another massive explosion rocked Wergok's flagship as a human missile found its mark. The Destroyer of Worlds was living up to its name, but not in the way its crew had expected. Instead of destroying a world, it was being destroyed by the very species it had helped to scatter across the galaxy. Admiral Wergok, a new voice, joined the communication channel. This one belonged to an older human male, his face weathered by years of command, but his eyes still sharp with intelligence. "I am Admiral Hien of the Terran Defense Force. I want you to understand something very important." "What?" Wergok snarled, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "We've been watching you," Hien said, his tone conversational, despite the destruction happening around them. "For 300 years, we've been studying every species in this galaxy, learning your tactics, your weaknesses, your patterns of behavior. The Krovaxi Empire is particularly predictable. You rely on intimidation and overwhelming force, but you've never faced an enemy that studied you first." As if to emphasize his point, another group of Krovaxi ships exploded in perfect sequence. The human fleet moved like a single organism, each captain knowing exactly where to be and when to strike. It was coordination born of centuries of practice and planning. "This is impossible," Wergok repeated, but his voice had lost all its fight. "We have conquered hundreds of worlds. We are the dominant force in this sector of the galaxy. We've conquered worlds full of peaceful species who had never prepared for war," Huyen replied calmly. "You've never faced Deathworlders, who had 3 centuries to get ready for you. The battle was nearly over. Of Wergok's original fleet of 80 ships, only 7 remained, their hulls scarred and their crews in panic. The human ships surrounded them like sharks circling wounded prey, their weapons powered but not yet firing. "I'm going to give you a choice," Admiral Han continued. You can surrender and face judgment for your crimes against peaceful species, or you can flee back to your empire and deliver a message for me. What message? Orgok asked, his voice barely above a whisper.
Tell them that humanity has returned.
Tell them that the age of preying on the innocent is over. Tell them that the Death Worlders are watching, and we remember everything. 5 of the remaining Krovaxi ships chose to surrender, their crews too broken to continue fighting. But 2 ships, including Wargak's flagship, engaged their hyperdrives and fled toward Krovaxi space, carrying with them the news that would change the galaxy forever. The humans had returned. And they were everything the old stories claimed, and far, far worse. The news traveled faster than the fastest starships in the galaxy. Within hours of the battle at New Haven, emergency channels across hundreds of worlds were buzzing with the same impossible message. The Terrans had returned. And they had just destroyed an entire Krovaxi battle fleet without breaking a sweat. The crystalline towers of the Vegan Trade Federation? Director Ziffin dropped his morning nutrition cube as he watched the combat footage that had somehow leaked from the battlefield. His 6 eyes widened in disbelief as he saw massive human dreadnoughts moving through space with deadly precision, their weapons turning Krovaxi battleships into expanding clouds of debris. This changes everything, he whispered to his aide, who was equally stunned by the holographic display. If the humans are truly back, then the old power structures are meaningless. On the war-torn borders of the Centauri conflict zone, General Krillos of the Mondorian Army Corps received the transmission while planning his next assault on a peaceful mining colony. His scaled features went pale as he watched the tactical analysis of the human fleet's capabilities. Ships that could appear from nowhere, weapons that ignored the most advanced shields, coordination that spoke of centuries of preparation. Cancel the attack, he ordered his surprised staff officers. All operations are suspended until further notice. But sir, his tactical advisor protested, we're just dealing with a few primitive miners. Surely the human presence at New Haven doesn't affect our local operations. Krellos turned to face his subordinate, his expression grim. You fool, don't you understand what this means? If the humans are back, then they're everywhere.
They could
be watching us right now, waiting to see if we step out of line. Meanwhile, on New Haven, Administrator Yuna stood in the ruins of her command center, watching through the shattered windows as massive human ships took positions around her world. The colony's shields were completely down, and the city bore the scars of the Krovaxi bombardment. But somehow it felt safer now than it had in years. Captain Deho's image materialized on the emergency communication screen that had been hastily repaired by his engineering teams. His face was kind, almost grandfatherly, but his eyes held the weight of centuries and the promise of protection that felt absolutely unbreakable. Administrator Yuna, he said with a slight bow of respect, I apologize for the delay in our response. The emergency protocols took some time to reach us, but we're here now. Thank you, Yuna replied, her voice thick with emotion. We thought we were going to die. The Krovaxi were going to destroy everything we've built here. The old treaties are back in effect, Deho announced, his voice carrying across the colony's emergency broadcast system so that every survivor could hear. The galactic protection protocols that your species signed 3 centuries ago have been reactivated. Any species that preys on the innocent will answer to us throughout the galaxy. And similar scenes were playing out as human ships emerged from hiding places that had concealed them for generations. The cargo freighter that had been making routine supply runs to the Altair Mining Consortium suddenly revealed itself as a heavy cruiser, its hull unfolding to display enough firepower to level a small moon. The research station that had been studying cosmic radiation near the Horsehead Nebula dropped its scientific disguise and became a forward operating base for an entire battle group. On the ancient world of Galactopolis, it's home to the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were being called as representatives from across the galaxy struggled to understand the implications of humanity's return. The massive amphitheater that had once voted for Earth's destruction now buzzed with nervous energy as species after species demanded answers. Counselor Vexi of the Andromedian Collective stood at the central podium, his tentacles writhing with anxiety. The situation is unprecedented, he announced to the packed chamber. For 300 years, we believed the Terran threat had been eliminated. Now they return with technology that makes our most advanced fleets look like children's toys. They're not acting like conquerors, observed Counselor Yildira of the Peaceful Trading Alliance. The reports from New Haven indicate they're positioning themselves as protectors, not invaders. Which makes them even more dangerous, Vexay replied grimly. A conqueror you can negotiate with, bargain with, perhaps even buy off. But protectors? They can't be reasoned with when they believe they're defending the innocent. Admiral Haon stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching as his fleet dispersed to strategic positions throughout the galaxy. Each ship was taking up station near worlds that had been marked as potential targets for aggressive empires, creating a network of protection that spanned thousands of light years. Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from over 24 military fleets, reported Commander Soman. It seems that news of our capabilities has reached the major powers faster than we anticipated. Good, Hoyan replied with satisfaction. The best battles are the ones you never have to fight. Every fleet that stands down is a victory for peace. Lieutenant Kwan looked up from her communications console. Sir, we're also receiving messages from peaceful species requesting protection. It seems that word of the protection protocols has spread to colonies that didn't even know they existed. Heon smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both gentle and terrifying. Then we'll protect them all. That's what we came back for. Across the galaxy, the changes were immediate and profound. Trade routes that had been plagued by pirates suddenly became safe as word spread that the humans were watching. Border disputes that had simmered for decades were quickly resolved as both sides realized that aggressive action might draw unwanted attention from the returned Deathworlders, the Krovaxi Empire. Once the terror of 3 sectors found their expansion completely halted as their remaining fleets received orders to withdraw to their core worlds. The survivors of Admiral Wergak's fleet had brought back footage of the battle at New Haven, and the sight of their invincible ships being destroyed like toys had shattered the Empire's confidence. On worlds that had lived under the constant threat of conquest, children played in streets that felt safe for the first time in generations. On trading stations that had been forced to pay protection money to various criminal organizations, merchants conducted business without fear. The galaxy had been reminded that there were still those who would stand up for the innocent, no matter the cost. Admiral Hayan walked to the viewport of his flagship, gazing out at the stars that had once seemed so hostile to humanity. 300 years ago, those same stars had witnessed the galaxy's attempt to destroy Earth. Now they bore witness to humanity's return, and not as conquerors seeking revenge, but as guardians, ensuring that no innocent world would ever again broadcast a desperate SOS into the void without receiving an answer. The age of unchecked aggression was over. The Deathworlders had come home to stay, and the galaxy would never be the same. Peace, it seemed, had finally found its champions, and they were everything the old stories had claimed, and more. The end.